given that we do have so many more young people today that are experiencing pathological levels of anxiety, depression, loneliness, problems with mental and emotional well-being, what is your advice to parents to help keep these kids safe and to get them on as solid ground as possible? We've got a bunch of parents listening right now. As the wellness director, what would be your best advice to parents?
It's a couple of key things. Number one, know your family history. So, I think I was 27 when I sat down with my parents and asked, hey, did anyone else in our family have a mental health disorder? And I'm not even exaggerating. Like 18 minutes later, they stopped naming people.
You go, hey, thanks for telling me.
You're like, okay, so there's two parts of knowing your family history. One is if you have mental health disorders or addiction in your family, you need to be extra vigilant because that is one of the biggest determining factors of if your kids are going to have it.
Yeah.
And then after knowing your family history, know more about those disorders so that you can spot them earlier on. So that if you see outbursts in behavior that are persistent as a kid, well, like maybe it's bigger than just that emotional development or that milestone. So knowing your family history has to be first and foremost.
What a good point. We don't think about that enough. We all know there's genetic predispositions, but we don't think about it enough.
No. 3 of my grandparents were alcoholics.
Yeah, what a great point.
So, the chances of me abusing substances, if I started at a young age, were really high. My parents didn't know that. My parents just had to survive living with the kind of classic 1950s alcoholic parents, right? So that's hard. The second piece is if you know your family history and you learn about these disorders and you can spot warning signs earlier, you really want to start a system where you can have conversations with your kid from a young age instead of confrontation. And that's hard. I think as parents, it's easy to say, do this, don't do this. And then you fall into that model from a young age. And then the kid grows up in a dynamic of either pushing back against it, back talking, whatever it is, or engaging in it. And one of the things I always try to do, especially with my students, is try to make them the expert of the issue that I'm teaching them. So if we're talking about vaping, instead of starting the lesson with don't vape, I ask them, what do you know about vaping? Who do you know that's vaping? You don't have to name names, but like, what do they do? Why do they vape? What's happening in that system for them? And then, are you vaping? And that is a much different dynamic where that kid gets to feel like the expert and is a part of the conversation. And then, I might still have to get to a point where we're like, yo, don't do this. Here's all the reasons why. But at least they feel included versus constant confrontation. And then I think another thing parents really need to do is model the behavior they want to see. You can't just tell your kids you want them to talk about their mental health. You want them to be balanced while you're working 40 hours a day and like not sleeping, screaming at your partner, and modeling all the behaviors you don't want them to have. You really, if you want your kids to have mental health, as difficult as it is in today's society where mental health isn't prioritized and it's not affordable in a lot of ways, right? For families, go outside and take a family walk and make sure it's something you do, even if they push back. Because the second you give it on a boundary, a kid learns how to manipulate you. Being a child is really just trying to figure out how to manipulate parents into doing what you want. And if you don't have boundaries for what you are prioritizing as mental health, well, of course they're going to get out of it. So that's an important piece. The next piece is take care of yourself because no one else is going to. I think, at least in my experience, and I don't have the experience of reaching as many people as you have, but I have spoken over 2 million people in person. And the amount of parents who are in a dark place, who have a kid who doesn't want to admit they have a problem, who doesn't want to accept it, and is staying up, all hours of the night because they're worried that kid's not going to come home, is a really common situation right now. My dad used to tell this gut-wrenching story where he would say he got to a point where he was convinced that one night it was just going to be the police at the door telling him I was dead. And in those moments, he knew that he had to take care of his mental health. That if he didn't take care of his mental health, much like the oxygen mask on a plane, he wasn't going to be able to give back to me. And so he always left the door open. And he had let me know, like, hey, here's what's available to you. I care about you. I love you. And his hope was to not lose himself in the process. And I don't think parents are able to have enough time to do that. But it's got to be a priority, even if it's 15 minutes, even if it's 30 minutes of joy. And if you are in a marriage, a relationship, a partnership, taking time for each other too, so that you can maintain that partnership and not lose it amidst everything that's happening with the kids. My oldest brother has bipolar disorder and was in a psychiatric ward throughout his college experience. I had my own struggles, and my parents never stopped going on dates. They never stopped taking a 1 or 2 day vacation. They never stopped trying to maintain what kept them strong, because they wanted to maintain that for the family. And yeah, sometimes it was strange, but for the most part, I get what they were trying to do. So that would be my advice. Know your family history, know what to look for, try to have conversations versus confrontations, model the mental health you want to see, and take care of yourself.
Well, that's a damn good checklist.
And don't be afraid to have those boundaries.
Yeah, boy.
You know, I think technology and boundaries for parents has really been a struggle, because, you know, if you give the kid that device, you're going to probably get to sleep.
Yeah.
But the device can't be the parent.
Yeah, we don't want electronic babysitters. We used to do it with TVs. Now we're doing it with devices.
Yeah.
Can't be.